get into some of the minimum wage issues. This chart started out 2 years ago when we were dealing with California minimum wage increase, and then all the cities started implementing the laws, and it started getting bigger and bigger, and it's pretty hard to read. But I wanted to put it up just to flag some of the issues that we're dealing with, all the different cities on the local level, and we also have, on top of that, the paid sick leave issues that everybody's dealing with. And it's really important that you are paying attention to these issues. And even if you're just operating in the city of LA and you think you have it under control, you need to be careful if your employees, if you have a catering company, are going into Santa Monica or different cities, that you're still complying with those cities' laws if your employees are working enough in those other cities. And right now it's a little gray. We haven't seen a lot of litigation of when those other laws will apply if your employees are traveling into those other cities. But generally they have to be in there for a number of hours per week, what we're seeing that's built into the law on that front. But it's something to pay attention to and be careful with. Now, California, we've seen this minimum wage increase on the state level just here on January 1st. It's up to $10.50 per hour for smaller employers and up to $11 per hour for larger employers. And it's a good time, we're well into the year, just to keep planning for the other minimum wage increases we're seeing on the local levels that normally take effect on January 1st. And then we know what California is going to be doing each year. So it's a good opportunity to look at it and plan ahead for pricing issues and budget issues. Some of the other issues that we're seeing, we're telling clients to keep a heads up on, is make sure you count all of your employees for if you're a large or small employer. If you have independent contractors, make sure that they're classified properly to make sure that they're part of that count. And really my advice to employers that are right on that bubble between the 25 employee threshold, just go conservative and count yourself as a large employer for the minimum wage issues. And we'll talk about why it really carries over more than just the minimum wage for your minimum wage earners. It carries over to your salary exempt employees as well. You've got liability on that front as well. And so we've had some issues come up, who's an employee, and what if you have employees that work for you part-time and you're going up and under that 25 employee threshold. We don't have any clear guidance on that, and that's why I'm recommending to all employers to just be conservative. And if you are going over 25, 26 employees for any period of time, just count yourself as a large employer, pay the higher minimum wage, and that's going to be a lot safer for you going forward. Now, here's how this minimum wage can come and hurt employers for exempt employees as well. So not just minimum wage earners, but your exempt salary employees, to meet the exemption. And let me know, feel free to stop me at any point if anybody wants me to talk about the exemptions or the differences between exempt and non-exempt. But it's a two-part test to be an exempt employee, and one part of that test is a salary level. The employees have to be earning 2 times the state minimum wage, the equivalent of 2 times state minimum wage, to qualify as exempt. So now we look at the state minimum wage, we don't look at the local minimum wages. So we're looking at the state minimum wage, it just went up. Now there's 2 different thresholds if you're a small employer or a large employer. So if you get that calculation wrong and you consider yourself a small employer, but you actually are a large employer, you've got a higher threshold that you need to be paying your exempt employees on a salary basis. So it's up to that $45,760 per year. And something to be aware of going forward. And then the other part of the test is that the employees are working more than 50% of their time doing high-level exempt duties. So it's a duties test and then the salary basis test. Now the other question we have in your packet, we actually have a sample notice to employees that Nicole will talk about a little more in detail. But with the minimum wage going up, if you provide this notice to employee and it has the lower minimum wage, but the minimum wage is going up every year now, do you have to reissue this notice to employee every year that the minimum wage goes up? And you don't. As long as the new minimum wage rate is showing up on the employee's pay stub for that pay period that the minimum wage goes up, and as long as that's reported to the employee on their pay stub, you're going to be covered. Now the other issue, I've got some clients that are hiring a lot that will pre-populate these notice to employees, fill out as much of that form as possible so that the manager doesn't have to complete it. But you need to be careful that you're using the updated minimum wage. And I've been seeing a lot of employers checking the wrong box on the paid sick leave portion on the second page of that form too. So if you have any particular questions about that, now's the time to talk about that. Ask us any questions. And we also have a sample pay stub in the materials that we handed out, all the information that needs to be listed on the pay stub. And while you're looking at the pay stubs to make sure that your payroll company has increased the minimum wage to comply with these new requirements and your local requirements, double check the employees' pay stubs. I've seen it more often than not with these payroll companies. They won't automatically increase minimum wage when even on a state level minimum wage increase. And they won't necessarily include all of the information that's on that pay stub unless you tell them to include it. Been seeing some large employers not including the paid sick leave. It needs to be included on the employee's pay stub, how much paid sick leave they have available to use, and that needs to be on there. And very large payroll companies have been leaving that off. So don't assume your payroll companies have that under control. Double check their work, and ultimately it's the employer on the hook for that if any of that is missing on the pay stub. Now, some other items not to forget about: the minimum wage disclosures and the notices. The cities are making this very easy, so you can go to their websites. We've got the links here. You can print these out and just post these with the other posters you have in the break room, but it's something to keep your eye on. So if you order posters, make sure you're getting all of the posters for the different cities that you're operating in. And we'll talk about some of the hiring disclosures that you have to do as well. So I've put together a little checklist for a minimum wage increase just to double check. And again, I'll circulate these slides. One issue too that a lot of clients have been asking about is how to communicate to the employees about the increases in wages. And it might be something, proactively to be mentioning to employees so that when they see their pay is going up, that they know why. Pay period or two before it's increasing. And then with the increased minimum wage, I see it a lot in the restaurant context, how can we manage that going forward? And you really need to make sure that you've got the overtime policy dialed in so that your managers are watching overtime, and employers can prohibit overtime that's not approved. Employers need to have a policy saying you need to get it approved in advance before you work it. But if employees still work the overtime, you still need to go ahead and pay it, but you can discipline the employee for working the unapproved overtime. And that's one thing to keep in mind with the higher minimum wages going up.